Swadika, thank you for joining us on Newsline. We're broadcasting live on NBT, Radio Thailand FM 88, and on NBT World. It's a Tuesday, and the date is November 11th, and you're with me, Sandra Han Utsaha. Welcome to today's segment of Thailand Moves Forward, and now on to today's headlines. The Prime Minister of Thailand held talks with the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, to establish a more integrated cooperation plan in trade and investment, while the Chinese business sector wants to use Thailand as a telecommunications hub in Southeast Asia. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha held a trilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea and the executives of Huawei Company. The Prime Ministers of Thailand and Papua New Guinea agreed to increase the trade volume between both countries to $720 million by the year 2017. Both countries are also expected to establish a cooperative agreement in the fisheries industry soon. Regarding the meeting with Huawei executives, the spokesperson said that Huawei is interested in investing in Thailand, as the country has the potential to be the telecommunications and internet hub of Southeast Asia. The company will conform to the Thai government's policy, while the Thai Prime Minister said that Thailand and China should work together towards investment in both countries and employment from the lower to higher levels, said the spokesperson. Huawei is a leading technology company in China, which is currently the largest telecommunications equipment maker in the world. The Thai Prime Minister was also scheduled to hold talks with delegates from the APEC Business Council and the executives of Thai private companies that have been investing in China. Government spokesman Captain Yongnuch Mayalap elaborated on the results of the discussion between Thai Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha and his Philippine counterpart Benigno S. Aquino III during the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC Summit in Beijing. In the bilateral meeting, the Philippine president expressed his admiration for General Prayut's effort to push forward innovative agricultural products, leading to the development of local SMEs and setting an example for the Philippines to follow suit. In turn, General Prayut commended Mr. Aquino's success in the enhancement of investor confidence, which has led to the Philippines achieving an average growth of 7%. Moreover, General Prayut emphasized that Thailand was willing to promote economic cooperation with the Philippines in order to increase trade and investment volumes between the two countries. Interior Minister General Anupong Pautinda has instructed the Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation, or DDPM, to work with southern provinces to mitigate impact from flooding. General Anupong said 4 southern provinces, including Nakhon Si Thammarat, Krabi, Pattani, and Chumphon, have been affected by heavy rains. He has instructed the Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation, or DDPM, to quickly respond to the disaster and help those affected to assure their safety. The DDPM has also been told to assess the scale of damage and plan relief measures accordingly. Any objects blocking the waterway should be removed immediately in order to lower the water level in the river. Provincial officials have been told to be on standby in response to any emergency situation. Finance Minister Somai Phasi has said the ministry will propose a draft bill regarding the inheritance tax to the Cabinet for consideration on November 12th. Thailand's newly proposed inheritance tax law would have a fixed rate of 10% and apply to families whose assets and wealth are valued at 50 million baht or higher. According to the ministry, the rate is considerably low compared to those in other countries like the United States and Japan, whose inheritance tax rates stand at 40% and 55% respectively. Meanwhile, the ministry has also proposed a gift tax at the rate of 5% for families whose assets and wealth are valued at 10 million baht or higher in a bid to prevent tax evasion. The Deputy Prime Minister has urged governors from all 4 regions of the country to accelerate their economic stimulus plans by focusing on labor reform and border enforcement. Deputy Prime Minister Mom Luang Pritiyathorn Thevakul has held a meeting with provincial governors and heads of related agencies of the provinces of Parachop Khiri Khan, Phetchabun, Samut Sakhon, and Samut Songkhram to follow up on the economic progress on the provincial level in the past 3 months. Important agendas included labor reform, the progress of the provincial Damrong Tham centers, and the improvement of border checkpoints. The Deputy Prime Minister has urged the provinces to follow through with the 3-month economic plan set by the government in order to adequately stimulate the local economy. The Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives has urged financial institutions to expedite the issuance of 15 billion baht loans to rubber farmers and confirms that financial aid will be distributed to them from the 15th of November onwards. Minister of Agriculture and Cooperatives Pitiphong Phungbun Ayutthaya said the lending for rubber farmers had been slow due to its complicated process. The farmers would receive the loans quickly, and those who were entitled to the 1,000 baht per rai financial aid would be paid this week. The ministry would also promote direct purchase in the central rubber market, the minister said. The ministry is in the process of developing cooperation plans with other rubber-producing countries and preparing for trading rubber in agricultural futures markets in the hope to stabilize rubber prices in the long run. Defense Minister General Prawit Wongsuwan, who is also the Deputy Prime Minister, visited the Royal Thai Army headquarters to ensure his support for the government to get ready for the upcoming ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC. General Prawit, along with the new Army Chief, General Udomdet Sitabot, who is also the Deputy Defense Minister, visited the Royal Thai Army headquarters for the first time after assuming their respective roles. Both of them were greeted by all 3 branches of the Thai military and delivered a summary on the current affairs and the issues on the nation's armed forces. The 2 generals urged the armed forces to continue supporting the work of the government and the National Council for Peace and Order, and to promptly assist the people in times of natural disasters and emergencies. Furthermore, they reminded the armed forces of their duties in protecting the sovereignty of the country while maintaining friendly relations with its neighboring countries in preparation for Thailand's integration into the AEC. The Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, or MSDHS, is now working to help the return of 252 Rohingya and Bangladeshi workers to their home countries and checking whether they are victims of human trafficking. 252 Rohingya and Bangladeshi people have illegally migrated to Thailand by sea in Ranong province and have been captured by the police since the 8th of November of 2014. According to the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security Minister, Police General Adun Sang Sengkao, officials from the MSDHS and the multidisciplinary team were tasked with providing assistance and checking whether any of these illegal workers were victims of human trafficking. He said that the ministry will be cooperating with related agencies to quickly learn whether they have been victims of human trafficking. The ministry will provide both aid and assistance to all human trafficking victims before returning them to their countries. The National Legislative Assembly, or NLA Whip, is scheduled to consider today a request of Ms. Yingluck Shinawat's legal team for the vote on the impeachment of the ex-premier to be pushed off. NLA Vice President Pirasak Pochit indicated a possibility for the NLA to move its deliberation on whether or not to impeach Ms. Yingluck over corruption in the rice pledging scheme from November 12th to a later date. He said considering the former Prime Minister's recent return from an overseas trip, the deferral would provide fairness and enough time for her to prepare to defend herself. A letter was recently sent by lawyers of Ms. Yingluck to the NLA, claiming that their client had just received the official charge documents from the NLA Secretariat on the 7th of November. Therefore, the NLA was urged to adjourn the verdict date of November 12th, as it was not in compliance with the meeting regulations, which required the papers to reach the defendant at least 15 days in advance. Nonetheless, Dr. Jade Siratharanon, spokesperson for the NLA whip, noted that the letter asked for a 30-day postponement, which was unreasonable and would unlikely be granted. He said the NLA whip would convene tomorrow afternoon to consider the postponement request, and if approved, a new verdict date would be set. The National Reform Council, or NRC, has made known that social inequality is the country's main concern, expressing a keen interest in tackling the issue through reforms. During a seminar hosted by the Reform Council, representatives of the group expressed concerns over the problem of inequality, saying members of the NRC must do whatever it takes to reduce social disparities and find a way for every member of society to have equal rights and opportunities. They said Thailand needs to have more effective income tax structures and a better distribution of wealth. In addition to this, members of the reform body said all children, including those living in rural areas, must have equal access to education. As for the energy sector, they said laws and legislation concerning energy must be modernized in order to create national stability, and that more long-term concessions must be awarded to ensure that public interest is upheld. As for the main obstacle, they voiced that the lack of seriousness and effectiveness of policymakers and those who implement them, as well as politicians' lack of cooperation, will prevent the NRC from achieving its goal. The first phase of taxi fare adjustments that is set to begin on December 1st has seen a flow of taxi operators continuously bringing in their vehicles to be checked and inspected. 76% of the inspected taxis have met the standards so far, while the rest have to go back and improve their vehicle quality, or they will be unable to raise their fare prices. As for unqualified taxis, they are being given 15 days to improve and come back for the inspection again. According to Deputy Transport Minister Akom Pithiyapaisit, there have been over 3,000 taxis that came to receive checkup services from November 3rd to 6th. The vehicles that passed inspection will receive certain documents as proof so that they are able to adjust their fare rates. Taxi fare adjustments will also be categorized in two different phases. The first stage involves requiring taxis to go through the inspection process. Later, the second stage involves asking the general public to express their level of satisfaction in using this service so that a second round of fare adjustments can take place. The Transport Ministry will set up a working committee to manage and organize public transportation, including buses, tour buses, motorcycle taxis, and taxis, as a means to improve their services provided for the public. Moving on to our next story, the late great poet Maya Angelou once said, "Laugh as much as possible, always laugh. It's the sweetest thing one can do for oneself and one's fellow human beings." Well, recently in Bangkok, there has been a spurt in the number of English language comedy clubs popping up to bring on the laughter. And NBT World correspondent Joel Gershon went to one of these clubs to hear some jokes and has a story for us.
Throughout history, people have told jokes to entertain audiences. From the ancient Greeks to the comic shows during the Zhou dynasty in China, to the jesters in the English royal court, through to vaudeville acts in the early 20th century in America. People have always loved to laugh. The modern stand-up comedy scene has roots in the US and England, where it's become an art form. Comedians work out their act in comedy clubs and either win the crowd or they bomb. In Bangkok, for English language speakers, unless they speak Thai very well, they won't understand the jokes of Udom, Tepanet, or Mom Jok Mok, and the kind of comedy that Thais love may not be as funny for foreigners. There are a few different places where foreigners can go watch English language comedy in Bangkok, such as Off-Centered Comedy, which has semi-regular shows in the Pink Cloud part of town, as well as Bangkok Hilarious, which is featured at the Overground Cafe on Sukhumvit Soi 22. Recently, the comedy club Bangkok opened above the Royal Oak on Sukhumvit 33/1, featuring weekly shows with English language performers from a variety of countries, including some who are on international tours, and the comedy club Bangkok even flies in some performers.
There's a universal need for comedy, and in Bangkok is an entertainment town. People come here to be entertained, but the entertainment didn't include a regular comedy show. I mean, there was comedy here, but it was at irregular intervals and at different places.
So, I mean, to have a dedicated place with weekly shows, you know, to know that you can always go to the Comedy Club Bangkok on a Friday, it gives someone another option for a night out.
Professional comedian Marty Lappin came all the way from Australia to provide laughs in Bangkok and elsewhere around the region.
Just a few gigs in Cambodia and then a few more in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah.
How have the audiences been in those places?
Oh, they're good. Yeah, they're good.
Tony Cho, a comedian from Beijing, spoke about what it's like to perform in front of a crowd that comes from a different background than he does.
Comedy is all about knowing well about your audience, but performing in a second language is not only about stepping into another culture, but also understand the audience very precisely. So that's the big challenge.
Tony was the last performer when we visited the Comedy Club Bangkok, and he definitely had the crowd with him.
My name is Tony Cho, and I was made in China.
So if you want to forget about the stress of life, or just have a laugh, or maybe find out how many farang it takes to screw in a light bulb, check out the Comedy Club Bangkok, or one of the other English language comedy venues around town.
Thank you to Kunjol Gershon for that report, and that's the end of today's edition of Thailand Moves Forward. Before we take a quick break, here's a look at the exchange rates and commodity prices.
Maintain a strong nation, Thailand is promoting 12 core values for the good of the people. The 9th core value, being conscious and mindful of actions in line with His Majesty the King's royal statements.
Hit the beach, see local sight, and soak in the spirit of the 4th Asian Beach Games in Phuket. From the 14th to 23rd of November, be a part of this exciting short scene. Watch and cheer as the region's top athletes battle to be the best in 26 beach sports and help extend true Thai hospitality to the 4th Asian Beach Games. Hosted by the Ministry of Tourism and Sports.
Faithful Buddhists are invited to donate to the building of a huge Buddha statue known as Pra Putta Metta. It's to be constructed at Tepratan Temple, Soidao, Jantaburi. With a 20,000 baht donation, the donor's name will be engraved on the foundations of the statue. Those wishing to contribute may make their donations at the Royal Thai Embassy or at the Consulate General in each country, 7-Eleven convenience stores and stores with counter service signs, Rung Thai Bank, Siam Commercial Bank or Bangkok Bank. Please contact the phone numbers shown for more details.
How could you do that to me? Stop it! Huh? Don't you get it? I don't need you anymore. Enough! We're through. There's someone else in my life.
Say no to the past. Bring your own bag. Say no to plastic.
Welcome back to Newsline. The APEC CEO summit concluded yesterday afternoon in Beijing. Over 1,500 business leaders from 12 international organizations and 38 economies attended the summit, which was held from Saturday to yesterday. During this summit, business people called for the establishment of the free trade area of Asia-Pacific and the continuation of trade liberalization and facilitation. The summit also suggested that APEC member economies formulate policies on private capital involvement in infrastructure investment and comprehensively achieve the blueprint of connectivity and combined development in the Asia-Pacific region. The APEC CEO Summit, the most important business event during APEC Leaders Week and the most influential business event in the Asia-Pacific region, provides a platform for promoting regional trade, investment, and cooperation. A private jet struck a construction crane on approach to Grand Bahama International Airport and crashed, killing all 9 people aboard, including the leader of the Bahamas Faith Ministries. Pastor Miles Monroe was headed from an area near Nassau, capital of the archipelago nation, to Grand Bahama, where authorities said they believed he was due to host a church conference. Police said Pastor Monroe was accompanied by his wife Ruth, as well as his Bahamas Faith Ministries deputy, Richard Pinder, another pastor, and his family, sources said. All 9 passengers and crew perished in the crash. Authorities said the Learjet exploded on impact with a crane at the Grand Bahama shipyard and plunged into a junkyard below as it was making its landing approach for Grand Bahama at about 5:10 a.m. yesterday, Thailand time, roughly an hour after takeoff. And that's it for today's edition of Newsline. For any comments or suggestions, please feel free to email them to us at newsline.nbt@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook by simply typing in NNT, and you can check out our website at thainews.prd.go.th/newsing. We're going to say goodbye today with some footage of a tricycle race in Nonthaburi province. Have a great day. I'm Sandra Han Utsaha. Sawadee ka.